Josh said he would help me build this encounter, but where can he be?
Jake, Jake,
Josh?
you will go to the challenge rating system.
The challenge rating system? Why would I go there?
There you will learn from Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, the dungeon masters who instructed me.
That sounds like really good advice, but the whole ghost thing, that creeps me out, right?
I just like the Force Ghosts. I want to talk about the CR system, and just, I don't know. I thought it'd be funny.
All right, Josh, I want to talk CR system here. The challenge rating system is something that gets a bad rap. A lot of YouTubers, a lot of dungeon masters, they don't like it. They feel like it doesn't create good encounters, like it's too easy, this and that. All the stuff any search online could easily find this kind of stuff. But I use the CR system, and I feel like it's effective. Is it really that bad?
I feel like the answer is both yes and no. If you're trying to use the CR system for what it was designed for, and what it was designed for being a starting point or a baseline, it's not the end all be all. It's a tool meant to help you, not hurt you. You I don't want to say any rule, but like most rules in D&D, you're not bound to it. It's there to kind of help you along, but it absolutely shouldn't be something like, oh, the CR system says so. I guess this is what we have to do. And definitely a lot of people get up in arms over it and start flipping out and freaking out. And I think it definitely gets the negative feedback. I'll say probably isn't warranted, because a lot of YouTubers and Reddit posts and all over the internet will tell you, don't even use it, completely ignore it. It's going to hurt your games, whatever. But you should also say yes to everything else. And we'll get into all that kind of stuff. But what I just want to say right now, if you haven't left this video yet and you are a new person, beginners, you should absolutely use the CR system. It's there to help you.
Yes.
Your encounters might be a little too easy when you start using it. But you know what? Especially if you've never done this before and you don't really know what you're doing, it's not a bad thing to have an easy encounter. We've talked about this before. Your players are going to feel powerful, and you also, now you have some experience of your own. Your experience threshold has just grown.
Hey, there it is.
And that's going to help you make encounters and learn your players and encounter building a little bit better. But I don't know, what you said, you do use the challenge rating system. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The most common criticism really is that it makes encounters that are typically too easy. And like you said, that's not necessarily bad. Sometimes that just makes your players feel really cool and strong, and that's awesome. And sometimes they need to just blow off some steam by destroying something easily. But once you just start to evaluate the players and the characters that are sitting at your table, you have these checkpoints every time that you see and understand, like, okay, so this encounter based on the challenge rating system was supposed to be, deadly, but they kind of blew past that, so I need to step it up a little bit in the future. Okay, maybe I'm going to count them as a level higher than they are, or maybe, whatever the case may be. And if you really like to dig into the numbers and math, like you're just not comfortable winging it, that count them as a level higher than they are. That's fine. You could do anything like that. If something is too hard, I mean, maybe you were like you really took all the experts, all the people that clicked record and posted on YouTube. They're the experts, right? They say it sucks, so you ignored it and you evaluated what it was, and it was too difficult, and then maybe you got to scale it back. But either way, you're gonna find information out just as the characters are getting experience and going to the next level. I mean, it does happen as a dungeon master too. It's and if you're hitting the nail on the head, then just keep doing what you're doing, because obviously you're doing something right. But the key is to pay attention to what's happening at your table and adjust accordingly. That's really it.
And just a quick note on too easy versus too hard, anything like that. Like something you've heard us say for years at this point, multiple times. Talk to your players. What do they want? What you might want
Yes.
might not be what they want.
Heaven forbid you should have a conversation with your players.
Sometimes a session 0 isn't just a session 0. It's actually talking to your players and players actually talking to your dungeon masters.
It's ongoing.
Yep, absolutely.
And I do think that there's a certain, like, the whole, like, rules as intended or rules as written kind of a concept that is, you'll hear that a lot. I don't see why the challenge rating system has to be any different. If you're going to sit there and just dogmatically, no, this says this is deadly. I'm gonna stay here. Like, well, they're blowing past it. But Josh, the CR system does not account for everything.
It doesn't account for most things.
Like some optional rules that were written when this first came out in 2014. Now, I haven't heard many tables not use feats, but that's technically an optional rule.
That's the biggest one, that for a lot of tables, your level 1 characters are starting off with feats. You have variant humans, like you're doing it for the feat. You
gotta run somewhere, you need feet.
Trying to get your feet wet,
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of players that are just right off the bat. They have these feats, and the CR system does not account for that. And I don't think it can, because
of course not. Yeah.
Your feat builds. I'm just gonna say a couple combinations here: Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, Sentinel. If you don't know what that could do, try it out. It's fun. It's a little overpowered, but it's cool. Here's another set of feats that I have seen players choose: Chef, Actor, Linguist.
Yep.
All cool. Completely different feats, completely different combat encounters, and completely different effects on the CR system.
And completely different player looking for completely different things from their game of Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely. I've seen people say that as a criticism against the CR system. Like, well, why doesn't it account for feats? Feats are technically an optional rule, but everyone uses them. This is the reason. Some people are trying to optimize their combat ability, and some people are just trying to have some fun role-playing options, or they just want to try something out. I forget what it is, whichever one is, like when you walk more than 10 feet, then you could use your bonus action to, you know what I'm talking about? The Charger, yeah. They want to try out Charger. They're not using it because it's the best. They want to try it out.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. It also doesn't account for magic items. Again, how could it? A lot of different options out there. If you're in the rare section, we were talking about this earlier, if you're
oh my gosh,
in the rare category, that can cover anything from a flame tongue weapon to, what was it, clairvoyance, potion of
clairvoyance. Yeah, that has the same effect on a game. But they're both magic items that are considered rare, so theoretically that has the same effect on the game, right? Of course not, especially when it comes to combat.
Yep. It's also, it's assuming that you're using either the standard array or point buy, which a lot of players and a lot of tables are rolling for stats. We roll for stats. I think it's more fun that way.
Absolutely.
I usually get stronger characters too, which can be fun. And then another reason is also something that a lot of influencers will tell you is a good thing, and that's what we described as reckless uses of the rule of cool and saying yes. Look, I'm all for saying yes. I'm all for rules as intended, what makes sense for the table, just doing something because it's fun. I've been playing this game for a long time. Players at my table, most of them, have also been playing for a long time. And we kind of all have an understanding of what that's going to do to our game when we make changes to it. You should probably be keeping things a little bit more to what was intended and what's written in the actual book, just when you're trying to learn and understand the game. And don't take me the wrong way, because I'm not telling you don't make the game, don't play the game that you want to play. I'm just saying if you're struggling with encounter building and you're struggling with just understanding these systems, start off by using the systems the way that they were designed, and then start making changes after the fact once you understand that. I think that's going to help out a whole lot.
I think that's outstanding advice, and actually the dungeon master that taught me personally just how much fun and how awesome it is to really lean into saying yes is our friend Matt. And it was one of those things that just very eye-opening to me. But he would have a lot of players at his table would know Matt's probably going to say yes if I say this thing. So they would start to come out with some outlandish things. But once in a while, we'd just be like, guys, the rule specifically says that's not allowed. And so like even he had his limits. And I think that's just a very good thing. If there's a rule that specifically says no, then you probably should say no. But if you're just doing backflips from the chandelier and you're landing 20 feet down, giving extra bludgeoning damage with your hammer as you slam into the enemy, well, maybe you are breaking the game a little bit. You just have to account for that. And no system could ever account for that because that's something unique to your table.
And the ability to make those changes is part of what makes these games great. But I would say that if you don't understand how the systems work, you don't really have the ability to make those changes. You're just kind of doing...
You're just winging it.
And your game is going to reflect that. So just be wary. That's it.
So those are some things that the CR system doesn't account for at all, because how could it? But there are also some things that I personally believe that the CR system poorly accounts for. And if you're going to look at the modifying encounter difficulty section of the Dungeon Master's Guide, it gives a few examples that they vary widely as to how much of an effect it would have on the system. I mean, one example is surprise. What if the enemy surprise you? That could be huge. Or what if you surprise them? Those could be wild swings in how easy or difficult an encounter is.
Yeah, I think surprise is a perfect example because it's interesting, right? This is a game of dice. It's a game of randomness, and it kind of becomes difficult to make encounters just in general because of how swingy the D20 is in general. We've had nights where I'm rolling crits like one after the other, and it's an encounter that maybe should have been pretty easy, but you guys can't roll over a 10, and I can't roll under a 17, and that's gonna absolutely change things. And surprise is something that's going to have a big effect on that. But there's other things that even the dice don't account for, and that really the game couldn't possibly account for. Those are things that are outside of the scope of dice and the scope of experience and all of that. And that's kind of just how the players play the game.
Oh yeah, I will design encounters, and I will purposely think oh, this is like a giant tree log stump thing, whatever, and I'm like, this would provide great cover from all the things that are going to be coming after them. The players may not even pay attention to it or care. And that could be just because they're role-playing their character, and they think, this is not what my character would do. They would go do something else instead, or maybe they didn't even think of it. The thought didn't occur to them. Maybe they're just not very tactically minded. That happens, and that's fine. You're going to have fun games of Dungeons and Dragons, but how could a system ever account for that? It can't. It just can't.
There's just no way. There's no way that it could. Every table is going to be different, and people are always going to miss things and take advantage of things that maybe you didn't notice. Another one that's specifically called out in the book is when players or enemies are taking damage from some sort of environmental or magical effects that's really only affected one side of the encounter, whether it's just affecting the enemies or just affecting the players. You also have... what was the crazy one? There was one crazy example that your players are trying to scale the side of a wall on a rope.
It says the characters are hanging from a rope in the midst of scaling a sheer wall or cliff, stuck to the floor, or otherwise in a situation that greatly hinders their mobility or makes them sitting ducks. Josh, you and I have literally made videos about how powerful movement is.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes be the biggest and greatest effect on an encounter is, can you move? Can they get to you? Can you get to them?
I think the hanging from a rope, scaling a wall is kind of interesting, right? Because you could take players that, well, let's call them level 5. You could take a group of level 5 players and just put a couple goblins on top of that wall. Those goblins are going to ruin your player's day. It doesn't have to be a lot of them. It could be technically an easy or a medium encounter with those goblins, but you know what? They're going to be able to easily do their hide and shoot you, or they could just cut the rope. And there's complications that I think it's very hard to try to make that work. If you're still just using the here's my experience threshold, so there should be, I don't know, whatever crazy monster that they're fighting at that level instead of just goblins. It's like, no, goblins or kobolds are okay as long as you're playing them the way they should be played. But even on a less crazy scope than, say, scaling the side of a wall, just difficult terrain in general. The way that your map, if you're using maps, is set up, also is going to be part of that encounter and part of that encounter building. And that's something that, again, it's kind of what Jake was talking about a moment ago, where how your players react to the terrain features and everything is going to change the way encounter goes. You know, if enemies have the high ground and you have to like climb or wade through like muddy water or a swamp or something, like that's going to change things. And I understand that you might be watching this and thinking, they said they like the CR system and use it, but it's been a lot of, this is what the CR system can't do, and this is what it shouldn't do, and this is what it's not used for, and all of that. And you might be wondering, like, how could it be good if it doesn't account for any of these things? What Jake and I are trying to explain to you is really the first point that I even made in this video. This is a baseline. This is something for you to say, I'm going to build an encounter. Let me check the CR system, see what it says. Okay, this is my starting point. From here on, I'm going to look at, did I give them crazy magic items? Do they have crazy feat, skills, trees? Is there some sort of surprise or ambush or crazy scenario that I need to think about? Don't blindly use the CR system and just try to stick to it exactly how it is and be upset when it doesn't work out, because you would never do that with any other rule in this game, and you're just setting yourself up for failure if you're doing it that way. Use it how we use it. It is a starting point, and then adjust it however you see fit.
And if you're interested in hearing us talk more about how to make your encounters completely dynamic and just really scratch that itch for great encounters in combat, check out the video that's on screen now. It's pretty good.